Hello, Abby.
Hi,
How are
how
you
you
this
doing?
week?
I'm okay. I am okay. Um, I am a little perplexed because you're gonna have to run everything today.
Yeah, it sounds like just to let the viewers know, we were a bit late getting started. In case you noticed, we're having some minor technical difficulties. Nothing that will stop us from doing the show. It's just Abby doesn't is having to be a guest, and I'll have to be the one controlling all the bells and whistles.
But the show must go on, and it looks like I can't even share.
It's all good. So we'll figure it out.
I
You
think
can,
you have to do it for me. I think.
if you need to throw me a link, I can share my screen and all that. So, but
No, I can. It's there. I see it, but I can't like add it to the stage.
right. So we can start with
There we
this
go.
video, this quick little video, and then we'll get to our comments. Welcome everybody. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, and just to preface the video. So before we play it, I just wanted to mention, I wanted to play this little clip from Nick from Revolutionary Blackout Network. Um, he had mentioned a few weeks ago or so that he had to step back from making videos for a moment because he felt his mental health was being affected by all the things that he was covering. And yeah, this can take a mental toll on you. So just speaking all these obvious, blatant acts against human decency by our policymakers, it can make you angry, right?
Oh yeah.
And yeah, and then you to watch them gaslight you like you're stupid, it's offensive and it's insulting. Which is why we played that James Baldwin quote, and hopefully we could put it back up after the clips are over. I did want to stop the clip around 45:22, if that's okay with you, and then we could play it again. Is that all
Mhm.
right with you?
Yeah.
All right, 45:22.
So is it playing on your end there? We don't. I don't see it playing here.
I can't do anything.
Right. So
Yeah, you have to
I
play it.
I have it called up, but I can't hit the play button on the video.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Okay, I'm
Thank you,
sorry.
Double O
I'm
Seven
sorry. I'm
Angelo.
sorry.
There you
Oh,
go.
so
What did
I
South
can stop it
Africa
myself
get?
then.
Our
That's
love
great.
and respect.
Perfect.
Absolutely.
Okay, so hold on.
Then for 499 Crow, outstanding content.
Oh, gee. Give me one moment to get it together.
No worries. So let's take a look at the chat. How you guys doing? Uh, welcome, Charlie, Tosh Schmidt. Stay balanced.
Charlie
Uh,
Brown.
while I have a moment, I'll apologize for not being able to be there in the chats for your shows. I missed your streams. I caught them uh, afterwards. Um, I just kind of it's been a bit busier week for me. I did manage to get some job resumes out finally. It's taken me months to get back looking for a job, so hopefully I get a call back. But like, yeah, I've only started doing the streaming for a couple months now, and we're only doing once a week. But I can tell you, this is particularly the subject matter that we've chosen to try and cover. It's quite hectic, quite stressful. You need to be in a good place mentally to be able to do this.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and press play. And since I have the controls, I'll pause it. But yeah, welcome everyone. I can't even see the comments,
Uh,
and I cannot stand that because I'm always here for the insights and the jokes. So I'll just see them as they come from Michael, I guess.
I'm just
All
gonna show
right,
them real quick. I hope to read them
perfect.
quick enough.
Oh yeah, yeah. Because I was watching that actually. So Todd Mint is in Louisiana with me. Um, so we got to see that together, and we both cried. So it was a very intimate moment. And now we're going to share it with you.
Yeah, we're viewer discretion advised. I put in the description for this video. We're going to be getting into some heavier subject matter tonight. So if you feel the need to watch something else, I completely understand. We're going to be talking about some of the drug epidemic problems that go along with their mental health. So it's going to be some graphic imagery and some intense subject matter. So strap in.
And Nick has been killing it on Palestine, and that's like one of the reasons we don't really cover it that much, because we know that we have some noteworthy cohorts that are covering it a lot. Sappy Sabs, Nick and CJ. So we tend to, as they do at Charlie Brown Politics, focus on other topics that still are noteworthy. So here we go. Can you bring that down so I can play this? Perfect.
I'm gonna play this video. I did see this video earlier. This is very good to see. And I mentioned it earlier this stream and in my hotspot video. The lawyers of South Africa, they're going to be remembered as civil rights heroes. They're going to be remembered as champions of international law. And they should be honored, and they should be proud of what they accomplished, because they planted the seed that will be used to hold Israel accountable. So here's the South African president. That this is celebration when he heard the ruling. I won't play this.
Par ces motifs, la Cour indique les mesures conservatoires suivantes. Par 15 voix contre 2, l'État d'Israël doit, conformément aux obligations lui incombant au titre de la Convention pour la prévention et la répression du génocide, prendre toutes les mesures en son pouvoir pour prévenir la commission à l'encontre des Palestiniens de Gaza.
What makes what South Africa did so incredible, and what makes Israel and the United States and France so despicable for smearing them as a legal arm of Hamas, is I want you guys to ask yourself this question. What does South Africa get for this? South Africa risked it all. They risked pissing off the West. They got nothing from this. They, as a nation, decided to lead and stand with justice for justice sake. That is something that our country never does. And this is why this story is so inspiring. Because if you think about their story, you had South African kids and teenagers that grew up under brutal apartheid that was supported by Israel. You guys know that? Israel materially supported the apartheid in South Africa the same way the United States did. So imagine these kids in South Africa growing up under this brutal apartheid state. They see Israel supporting the apartheid. So you know what they do? They read. They learn. They learn the laws. They learn the book that their oppressors wrote. They learn the rule books in which they operate. They learn the law. They grow the fuck up, become legal scholars, become judges, and then they take Israel, the country that funded and supported their apartheid to court and exposed them as a genocidal country that they are. This is a massive, major win for the South African team. And these people are heroes. This is South Africa celebrating their victory of justice. And I want to add a little bit of positivity here, because this is the good part. Is this precedent that will be set of these countries that was obliterated during the era of colonialism, who now know the law, who are in a better position to hold these people in these countries accountable. This is just the beginning. This is the positive part of this. So let's feel good just for at least a little bit at the end of the stream. See, I gotta be honest, man. I get emotional. I'll be honest, man. Like, I'm proud, man, of my African people stand up to this evil, man. I'll be honest. I play the speech, man. Like, that shit hits hard, man. My people stand up to this evil as the country I pay taxes to fund this shit. As our society fund this bullshit. As we are gaslighted to supporting the genocide, man. And I see my people stand up to this internationally. Like, I'm sorry. Like, this shit really does fuck with me, man.
With the people of Palestine, and our message to them is never give up hope. South Africa got over the apartheid oppression. They will overcome. We stand with the people of Palestine, and our message to them is never give up hope. South Africa got over the apartheid oppression. They will overcome.
People can be upset all they want, but I'm proud of my people for this, man. The West lost their mind, and we have the global South that's standing up to this. Like this, I've been following this story for so long, man. Watching these people suffer, watching the African people suffer, and now these people have the ability to stand up. So it's not the end of this shit, but it's beautiful to see this. I'm sorry. This is the first time I really like broke down on stream before, but this is something else, man. And even though it's not the end of this should give you hope. This should inspire revolutionary optimism, even if this doesn't necessarily end it. I already do that in the stream. Wasn't planning to get emotional or anything, but man, that shit is beautiful. How can you not be moved at that? These people suffered their entire life, man. They grew up, these people, look at their age, they old enough, they grew up under apartheid, man. And now they rose up and they are celebrated as civil rights icons. I've been watching these videos and pictures for all day, man. It's just good to see. We really gotta bring Israel to Hill, so I hope you guys enjoyed. I'll be reading some more super chats.
Don't know what to say to follow that up, you know?
Well, I'm teary-eyed right now. So my message, I wanted to play that just so I could remind people, yes, we need to get angry, but this anger, we can turn it around into action, and don't let the anger overcome us.
Yeah.
Right? Don't let it overcome you, and give yourself the room to cry, to celebrate small wins, because your body needs to release those endorphins to counter the negative emotions that you're experiencing when you're digging into these topics. So that was my purpose for playing that. And I am still teared up, and it's great because I have the code, so I need to log out and come back in, so I'll have all that the same access you have, which is a good moment for me to get myself together. Okay, so I'll see you soon.
No worries.
Okay, thank you.
So Nick was saying there that he's got some like tears of pride there, right, for his people standing up, and then I'm not really having much of an emotional. I'm a bit more numb at the moment, right? Things have been kind of overwhelming. So for me, it's been a little bit. It's not that I have no emotion when I see that. It's that I've been under the onslaught of this for quite a while now, and so it's starting to be. You got to kind of compartmentalize a little bit and try and stay objective and stuff. So, but they got tears of pride, and then if I did have my tears at the moment, they would be tears of shame for my people not being able to rise to the moment and to abandon their greedy addictions in favor, like built on the backs of all these other people. They just refuse to come to terms with reality, and it's heartbreaking. It's mind crushing. It's not just heart, like it makes it difficult for me to understand my own place in reality and in my community, who my people are, when my people support genocide and refuse to acknowledge that is even what they are doing. They call me crazy, basically, for getting angry at them, for feeling like they don't have anything that they need to do in response to all this, you know. But anyways, not to monologue too much, I will show you the first video that I wanted to share. It's just a short video from CBS talking about U.S. cracks down on China-based fentanyl trafficking. So this is only a few minutes, so let's just watch it and then comment after. So.
The U.S. is cracking down on fentanyl traffickers based out of China. The Biden administration sanctioned 25 Chinese individuals and entities for their alleged involvement in manufacturing and selling fentanyl. Justice Department also indicted 8 Chinese companies and 12 executives. The fentanyl epidemic in the United States killed more than 72,000 people in 2022, according to the CDC. For more on this, let's bring in Dmitry Sevastopoulos. He is a U.S.-China correspondent for the Financial Times. Dmitry, thank you for being with us. At issue is mostly the precursor chemicals to fentanyl. Can you explain China's role in those?
Sure. So until a few years ago, China was actually exporting or smuggling fentanyl itself to the U.S. But in 2021, it scheduled the drug, made it illegal. And what's happened is the Chinese drug syndicates and smugglers have shifted. And now what they're doing is sending the raw materials, which are the precursor drugs or chemicals, to Mexico. And then the drug cartels in Mexico are manufacturing fentanyl there and sending it across the border into the U.S.
And why aren't the United States and China able to reach an agreement on how to stop these ingredients?
Well, I think there's a number of reasons. One is that the two countries were in talks about doing things on drug trafficking, fentanyl and other drugs for a long time. But after Nancy Pelosi went to Taiwan, then the Speaker of the House, in 2022, China stopped a whole range of negotiations with the US, including over drug trafficking. Now, the talks have resumed, but they haven't managed to reach any kind of a deal. And there's several issues. I mean, one is the Chinese, the Americans say, are using the talks about fentanyl as a kind of a bargaining chip, and they want to say they'll cooperate if the US does other things. They also say that the US hasn't done enough to prevent some of the drugs coming into its own country, and that the US has responsibility too. So they're at a bit of a an impasse at the moment. And one of the questions is, if President Biden meets President Xi Jinping at APEC next month, is this going to be one of the issues where the two sides can actually reach some agreement?
Is there a financial interest for China? I mean, in other words, are these chemicals lucrative, and that might be a part of the discussion?
I don't think there's a financial interest for the Chinese government. And I think probably this problem, if it went away, would actually make life easier for the Chinese government. But it's very lucrative for the Chinese drug syndicates who are exporting or smuggling these chemicals to Mexico. So, you know, that's why they're doing it. They make a lot of money out of it, and they're not going to stop until the Chinese government cracks down on them.
And just to go back to this question of Mexico for a second, Attorney General Merrick Garland, Secretary of State Antony Blinken, and Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas are all traveling to Mexico to discuss fentanyl. What's the hope there with respect to this supply chain?
I think one of their main goals is that they convince the Mexican president to invest more money in boosting security, doing more to intercept drugs or precursor chemicals as they're coming into Mexico. But it's going to be a challenge. The Mexican president himself has denied that Mexico is a production site for these drugs. And so that gives you a sense of the steep hill that they have to climb down in Mexico City this week.
And is there any other part of the supply chain that is a part of the U.S. diplomatic conversation here? We hear a lot about China and Mexico. Is that basically the major part of it?
I think it's the major part, and there have been efforts in the past. The US has promoted efforts to have a trilateral discussion between Mexico, China, and the US, but that was also interrupted when Pelosi went to Taiwan, and I don't think that has been resumed since then.
Dimitri Sevastopoulos with the Financial Times. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Okay, so I failed to preface that properly a little bit. I meant to explain what happened at my apartment building over the weekend. There's no proper locks on the doors for something I don't want to get into. So the homeless drug users can wander into the building whenever they want, and they do frequently. And there's an older man who was coming back over and over again on the one night or one day. And so I was asking him to leave, and he had fallen down the stairs and hit his head. So I had to call an ambulance for him. And I thought that would be at least some kind of good thing that I'd been able to do for him. But then within 4, 5, 6 hours later on that same night, he was back in the building again with a bandage on his head, but with being he was behaving very erratically and unstable. So I would have thought that they would have done an involuntary 72-hour stay at the hospital, and they did not do that. And this is something that's happened to me. To give you a little bit of a brief background into what's gone on with me, I have been in the psych ward. I was involuntarily put in there at one point for much less crisis, much smaller crisis situation kind of thing. But so it just goes to demonstrate that the healthcare resources are going to younger, healthier, better, more well-off and better resourced people are getting better treatment. And so it seems like the worse off that you are, the less healthcare that you get. And Canada's got this wonderful international reputation that's over the last several years been very deteriorated. Now, if anyone really knows, Canada's healthcare is kind of a joke, even though if you want to compare us maybe to the American healthcare system, we might look a little bit better that way. But things are getting insane and unacceptable. And this is what I would say eugenic practice, to try and send people out like that. He probably didn't have identification to prove that he was a Canadian, so they probably just refused to give him treatment. So I thought that we should cover the drug crisis because that happened. So got some comments there, Abby?
No. Well, I mean, people do tout, your system as a much better system than ours. But the government is like, the system is going to be as good as the government is, because if they're corrupt, they're always going to try to find a way to funnel money from the system that's supposed to help people into their own pockets. Which is why you gotta be vigilant and watch them, because the way they word things and the laws that they put together, they seem good, if from the titles and from the hit pieces, but when you really look at the meat and potatoes of the law, it's not really doing anything to help the people, which was what I wanted to talk about. So I don't know if you have more on that piece, and then I'll go to mine, or if I should go to that, and then we go back to your piece.
Yeah,
you just let me know, because I my code expired, so I'm still
yeah, I thought
still pissing
I had
the
to
wind.
add you, still had to add you to the stage, so I thought that maybe you didn't quite get the code like you were looking for, but
It expired.
I failed to. I didn't preface the video properly, so then after the video, I didn't get the chance to speak on it. So I just wanted to, before we forget about it already, they were blaming China as the main supplier of the illegal drugs, and you notice how they also are trying to kind of throw Mexico under the bus there, and they're always trying to look to somebody else to sort of scapegoat for the problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
I mean, they want beef with Taiwan, so
yeah,
they're scapegoating China in whatever way they can.
yeah.
Well,
So you heard that in the video she said in the agreement when he said when Pelosi went to Taiwan, that was when the talks on these drug cooperation agreements were halted. So it's one of the, there's always, we get kind of caught up in the bigger consequences of these kinds of things, but there are always these smaller things that fall through the cracks too.
mm-hmm.
And this is not something that we can afford. We need these, if you want to deal with the global illicit drug supply, it needs to be cooperative. We cannot have one country deal with their drug crisis alone, because the drugs come from across the border, right? You can't deal with the border crisis if you're not going to deal with the drug crisis. And we know that the imperialists historically have been the ones who have profited from and been responsible for state-sponsored drug, whatever, supply in the populations, right?
Yeah, like what's that? The turtle's name? The turtle that was like glitching on the house. What is his name? I don't know why his name just escaped me.
I'm not sure what
Mitch
you mean.
McConnell.
Oh, the turtle. Yeah, he looks like a turtle. Yeah.
They found like all these drugs on his wife's, on the what's wrong with my brain? The cargo. I don't know what they're called. I can't think right now. I'm a little flustered because I can't see anything and I can't do anything. It's bothering me.
Yeah.
But yeah, and Nancy Pelosi, like she said all the people who were protesting, most of the people who were protesting the genocide were they were being funded by Russia. And I'm like, oh, great, the Russia thing again. But then it was very interesting. An Asian person, I don't know where they came from, but I know they were Asian, was protesting outside of her house. And she told the lady, go back to China where your headquarters is at. So,
right. Yeah. There's a lot of racism caught up with this blaming of who's responsible for the drug situation too, because historically, with the opium wars and stuff, a lot of the British Empire had intentionally turned Asia into a drug factory for the whole world, and that's kind of what really started off. We'll get into it later. That's what starts off the international cooperative anti-drug war, right? So, just before we go to your thing, I thought it would be worth showing this. This is from the CGTN, China's official state broadcaster. It's an infographic, just why is fentanyl dangerous, from 2018. So we could just quickly take a look at some basic facts that people probably already know, but if you don't, here we go. Fentanyl is a type strong narcotic that is similar pharmacological actions to morphine. Takes effect rapidly, doesn't last long. 50 to 100 times stronger than morphine. Used daily by anesthesiologists. It's used for all kinds of pain and provides analgesic effects during and after surgical and gynecological operations. So this is never going away. This is definitely something we need for medical purposes. What we need to do is have it properly controlled, which is that an impossible task? I don't think so, but it takes a lot of discipline. So the research and development, it was successfully developed in the 1960s, first synthesized by Paul Janssen. So if you know, the Janssen Corporation recently changed its name to Johnson & Johnson. We have an idea of who is the one who opened Pandora's box, so to speak, with the goal of being more effective than morphine with fewer side effects. So to be determined if they achieve the goal or not. So fentanyl is approved for medical use in 1968. introduced mid-1990s into the clinic, introduced transdermal patches, 2009 widespread use for cancer-related pain. It's not only a drug, it's also an important ingredient in laboratory drugs. So if you've heard of carfentanil, it's 10,000 times stronger than morphine. Just 0.2 grams is enough to kill someone. It's been targeted by international traffickers and become a vital ingredient. They've added excessive amounts to heroin. So if you think you're just using heroin, you have no idea. You may actually be onto a substance that you won't be able to, even harder to kick or whatever. So there's a particular statistic I wanted to get to, but
While you're looking for it, and there's a new drug out called, like, I think they call it Tranquil or something, because it
yeah.
puts
So
you out like
they've got more and more, like, the
intense.
drug is updated faster than authorities can crack down on it. So they develop a way to test to find the known analogs, but they keep coming up with new variations. I don't really know chemistry or whatever, but it's just one of those things that's possible. So, but here it is. The U.S. accounts for 5% of the world's population, but consumes 80% of the world's opioids. Okay, so this is kind of a creation of our own doing, right? Your own, or Canada's in the same boat. So yeah.
So I actually can see the comments, which is awesome.
Cool.
They're lighting it up in the comment section.
Yeah. Life is real no matter where you are. That's true. Always will be. Yeah, I forget exactly what you meant by what was counterintuitive. I think about the people who get the most, who are better off, get better healthcare, and the people who need it most get the least. So counterintuitive is one word for it. So
can you go? Can you go back to 504? That's funny. Are you a Chinese communist? I'm Polynesian.
Not sure what you mean 504.
Oh, 5:04 p.m. I just really want to show that one. By Tosmit.
Oh, it's 5. Yeah, for me it's 604. So this one.
Yeah, this was the most authentic RBN moment for me. I love it. Thanks for that, Nick. So, Nick, if you're watching, thanks for that. Or when you see it later, we appreciate the vulnerability.
And it was certainly not scripted, right? Like there are some other places you'll go to the mainstream, they may actually try and do some literal crocodile tears and pretend like they care. This is real, genuine emotion coming from RBN there. So.
Oh yeah, it wasn't an MSNBC moment or a CNN moment for sure.
Never. So we got Putin puppets shit again. It's the actor from The Wire passed away. I'm not sure who
Fentanyl.
Talking about there, but I think there was maybe
I know who he's talking about. I just can't remember his name.
Yeah, I thought maybe there was also fentanyl involved with the Friends guy, the Chandler dude.
I thought he was an alcoholic.
I would think it was alcohol and like ketamine, but I thought maybe just a rumor that I heard, but maybe updated on top of that, there was maybe traces of fentanyl or something. I wouldn't be surprised. Like
I really don't know.
People assume it's the poorest and the stupidest or whatever kind of people. This drug affects people from all kinds of walks of life. So, the victim list is still growing. Yeah, I feel this is all intentional. This is the problem, that you're treated like a conspiracy theorist when you're trying to say that they're trying to cull us. You know, they're killing off the weak and the hopeless. That's exactly what's happening. Open your eyes. Go downtown, take a look.
Fiddle forward. Listening over from the beginning, and there is a form of eugenics in Canada in our social care systems.
It's time to admit it and acknowledge it in the open and get rid of it. all it will do is weaken and destroy us. It will not make us any healthier.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways,
So,
back to our content. You got something you want to share here?
yeah, you can share my screen, and you can change the bottom to, I don't know, what's it called? The CARE Act of California. So I kind of focused on that one specifically because they were touting it as a major win for the state. And so I wanted to delve into it a little more and see if it is actually a major win. So I'm going to start with this opinion piece. I'm going to be reading a lot, but I'm going to try to breeze through it because in the end, it's all a crock of shit anyway. So here's how Reagan's decision to close mental institutions led to the homelessness crisis. So this is a psychologist. They've been practicing for 40 years, and they've seen a significant shift or shit in the care of the mentally ill since the mid-1980s, and it hasn't been for the better. After the deinstitutionalization movement began in California in the 1960s, many state and mental health hospitals closed, forcing many folks who needed a lot of care onto the streets. So without those facilities, most of those people would end up in jail, right? Or prisons, because we got to fill those prisons and fulfill those the need for the prison industrial complex too. But in 1981, when President Ronald Reagan deinstitutionalized the mentally ill and emptied the psychiatric hospitals into so-called community clinics, the problem just got exponentially worse. Tongue-tied here. Most of those who were deinstitutionalized from the nation's public psychiatric hospitals were severely mentally ill. Between 50% and 60% were diagnosed with schizophrenia. And the fact that many of these people struggle with various forms of brain dysfunction was not recognized back then. With so many advances in brain science, experts now know that we need to be able to coordinate care in residential facilities, especially if we are using people at $4,000 per day in a local medical hospital. $4,000 per day.
Mm-hmm.
People with, yeah, it's quite a lot. It's quite a lot. So I'm going to go down a little bit just for the sake of time. So according to the Regional Task Force on Homelessness in 2022, the number of homeless people in San Diego County was 8,427 individuals, a 10% increase from 2020. Okay, then they said in 2019 that homeless patients made about 100,000 visits to California hospitals in 2017, which was up 28% from 2 years earlier. So it's not getting any better. So in 2017, homeless people staying in San Diego hospitals cost $3,000 to $5,000 a day. Even at the low end, the cost to taxpayers is more than $1 million a year for one patient. Any quality supported residential program would not cost $5,000 per day. The system is paying for the care of the severely mentally ill homeless populations in multiple other ways. So, Gavin Newsom, in all his glory, he started a statewide program called the Care Court System. Where lawmakers created that, and that county government is implementing locally so courts can impose services on people with severe mental illness. This program will provide support and extra guardrails needed for a person whose brain is not functioning at its optimum capacity. Okay, and this is supposed to give people the dignity, security, compassion that they deserve. All right, so I wanted to look into it. Here's the bill. First of all, it's a fancy name, Community Assistance Recovery Empowerment Court Program. Very fancy. We tend to do that a lot these days, give our bills real fancy names.
Well, they put the word empowerment in there when they're giving themselves the authority to force you into treatment. So this isn't really about empowerment. It's kind of the opposite.
Right. So I skimmed through the bill so you guys wouldn't have to. So I just highlight a few little things, and then there's details. After these few little things I highlight, there's details about each of these things. Okay. 1, existing law, the Assisted Outpatient Treatment Demonstration Project Act of 2002, known as Laura's Law, requires each county to offer specified mental health programs, unless a county or group of counties opts out by a resolution passed by the governing body. Okay. And then there's an existing law, the Lanterman-Petrus Short Act, provides for short-term and long-term involuntary treatment and conservatorships for people who are determined to be gravely disabled. And then they say some stuff about the CARES program. This bill would exempt let me go to this first. So I went to these 2 different laws. Okay, assisted outpatient treatment. So this bill is basic Lawrence law. It provides court-ordered community treatment for individuals with a history of repeated hospitalization or incarceration, or a history of violent behavior to self or others. The AOT permits California counties to utilize courts, probation, and mental health systems to address the needs of individuals unable to participate in community mental health treatment programs without supervision. So that's basically what that is. The next one that I said is the Lanterman-Petrus Short Act. Okay, this is the one that allows a policeman or mental health counselors to put someone on a 72-hour hold. And then once they're evaluated and assessed, then they can either take themselves out voluntarily, or they can be held for 14 more days on an involuntary hold for intense treatment. Okay, so
I am intimately aware of that process.
Okay. Yep. So that's what that is. And then I'll go back to this bill. I'm going back to the CARE Act. Why did I highlight this? The bill would exempt a county or an employee or agent of a county from civil or criminal liability for any action by a respondent in the care process, except when an act or omission constitute gross negligence, recklessness, or willful misconduct. Oh, I know why I highlighted that, because that sounds a lot like qualified immunity.
That's exactly what it is. And you know how often they're ever going to be found to have acted with recklessness and carelessness? Never. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like these people and the paramedics that just dealt with this person in my hallway the other day.
Mm-hmm.
They were reckless and careless. That's in my opinion. They will always say whatever.
Right. So now I'm going to read this one, and then I'll kind of move on. I'm not going to bore you with all of these details. It's rather long, and I did read through a lot of it. Not all of it line by line, but I did do some due diligence here, and I'm going to tell you what I think afterwards. Okay, so number 2, the existing law Knox-Keene Healthcare Service Plan Act of 1975 provides for the licensure and regulation of healthcare service plans by the Department of Managed Healthcare. It actually used to be handled by, I think, the Department of Corporations, and so this law moved it away from that to the Department of Managed Healthcare. I believe it's the Department of Corporations. Existing law also provides for regulation of health insurers by the Department of Insurance. Existing law requires healthcare service plans and insurers to provide coverage for medically necessary treatment. And I highlighted provide because we're going to talk about that later. It's almost like having access to healthcare. It's
Right.
kind of the same little lingo there.
Yeah.
But existing law requires healthcare service plans and insurers to provide coverage for medically necessary treatment of mental health and substance use disorders. Violation of the Knox-Keene Act by a healthcare service plan is a crime. Okay, so what is that? So this is basically these are the services that are provided. they kind of break them down. Okay, so now let's make sense of it all. This is from the California Healthcare Foundation. And I just I found something really interesting. I think it was on page, no, I'll see it when I see it. Okay, Knox-Mills Act. HMOs, yada, yada. Where are you?
It'll turn up shortly.
Yeah, maybe I'm going too fast because I'm all excited. Yeah, I think I went too fast. Let me do it again.
No worries. Take a look at some of these comments here.
Yeah, take a look at some of the comments.
So he says it was Michael K. Williams from The Wire. I don't know who. I don't really watch too much TV anymore, so I don't really know actors and stuff.
I found it. I think that's the guy that had the scar on his forehead. So I found it. I ran right past it. Medi-Cal PHP scandals. So Medi-Cal is the Medicaid in California. They call it Medi-Cal. In 1971, Governor Ronald Reagan proposed sweeping reforms. Can you see this? Let me see. Let me do this. Is that better?
Yeah.
In 1971, Governor Ronald Reagan proposed sweeping reforms in the Medi-Cal program, which included a strong emphasis on prepaid health plans as a means of reducing Medi-Cal costs. The problems began almost immediately. By mid-1972, the media was reporting misrepresentations by health plan enrollers, poor quality of care, and failure to provide promised transportation to medical offices. Many newly organized PHPs were little more than schemes to funnel Medi-Cal dollars through a nonprofit shell to for-profit corporations owned by the same providers. How many times have we heard about this money laundering scheme? In various industries in the United States. Anyway, I digress. In some cases, the plans actually sold health plan shares to unscrupulous providers who were hoping to reap huge profits in the form of provider payments. Plan owners and partners siphoned off funds, leaving other providers without payment and the PHP shell in financial disarray. This reminds me of when they were blaming poor people for subprime mortgages and glossing over the fact that the banks were, the banks are who left us in financial disarray by using those mortgage-backed securities as assets when it was really bundled debt, and when they deregulated them. Remember that from last week? So this was like ding, ding, ding when I was reading this. So it's in every industry. They're going to find a way to mess over us. So for me, this just solidifies what we already know, right? Yeah. As long as healthcare is monetized, there's going to be corruption. And if we do have if we had Medicare for all, there would have to be plenty of checks and balances in place to ensure the money isn't stolen or siphoned, because this is Medi-Cal, Medicaid. It's not Medicaid for all, but it is Medicaid for some. And they're already like funneling the money in. Yeah. And this was in.
This is an example of white collar crime that I'd say it causes far more damage than the blue collar crime.
Correct. And this is in the 70s. So by now they really perfected it. Right. So, so like I said, I did skim through the CARE Act. Okay. And to me, it just sounded like a repackaging of all those 3 previous laws that I read to you. So I didn't really find any new information that would wow me. It was just basically the act is an acronym with a catchy, positive name: Community Assistance, Recovery, and Empowerment. Yeah. But that's the way of the land these days. They just add a catchy, feel-good title to a crappy bill.
Yeah, so they act like they're giving you a concession, and then people think, well, because this is clearly about healthcare, it must be an actual concession. But if you look into the details, you find that it's actually a nothing burger, right?
Yeah.
They're doing the same thing. Or Canada just has a new dental plan, and then me and some of my comrades were looking into, okay, well, what's wrong with the dental how are they screwing us by offering us something? So don't look the gift horse in the mouth, right? Because they're basically finding a way to, if you're offered healthcare by your employer, even if it's shitty, a terrible benefits package that you'll decline, the fact that you were offered it at all means that you're not now eligible for the new program that they just rolled out. So they do find ways to deny you healthcare while claiming that they're providing a new package. So
Right. That's the way. That's how they roll. So then, I'm seeing that you put it up already. Okay, so because what I was reading didn't sit right with me, when I skimmed the CARE Act, I decided to try to dig a little deeper, and this is what I found. They are being sued right now. So I'm going to read a little bit of this. The reason they are being sued. Okay, an unprecedented number of Californians live on the streets and face severe mental illness. It is gut-wrenching to see. The CARE Act accurately describes this humanitarian crisis, but prescribes a wrong, inhumane solution. Not only is it creating this new court system to round up individuals unconstitutional, it is bad policy subject to pervasive social biases and disproven methods of treating mental illness. So that is why the Disability Rights California Western Center on Law and Poverty and the Public Interest Law Project sued Governor Newsom to put an end to the CARE Act. Now, contrary to some strong opinions that CARE Court is California's only real plan for helping our most vulnerable and seriously mentally ill, Governor Newsom never planned to truly provide behavioral health treatment and housing through this bill. The CARE Act does not mandate counties to provide behavioral health treatment or housing. It creates no new rights or benefits, which is what I thought when I read through the bill. I'm like, there's nothing new here. It's just taking 3 laws that you already have and bundling them under a cute name. So anyway, it creates no new rights or benefits for people with schizophrenia or other psychotic disorders who are summoned to court to join the care process. Rather, all CARE court-ordered services are subject to available funding. So remember when I said provide, remember that word? They're ordered to provide,
yeah,
provide access to.
Yeah.
So the CARE court-ordered services are subject to available funding and all applicable federal and state statute and regulations, contractual provisions, and policy guidance governing initial and ongoing program eligibility. So all they have to do is siphon the money, put the money elsewhere. Gavin Newsom had a 40, I think was it 40 million or 40? He had a $40 million surplus, and now all the money's gone.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what they're gonna
You could have ended homelessness.
with available funds, they say they're gonna do what they're doing in Canada. The federal government will blame the provinces and the municipal government for not providing funding, and then the municipal and the provincial governments will blame the federal government for not providing funding, and they get to play a blame game while nobody gets what healthcare they need.
Right. It's just the same cycle over and over and over again, decades long. There was a study that projected that if nothing significant changes by 2028, California will have 50% fewer psychiatrists to meet demand for behavioral health services and 28% fewer psychologists, therapists, and social workers combined to meet the demand, because the demand is growing exponentially, right? And
That's
compounding
50% fewer and 28%. Like you've got a brain drain going on there. Like people have no help. They get drugs instead.
Yeah, and like it says here, we see this play out daily with stark disparities based on income and race. For example, in Compton, there are only 5 licensed psychologists compared to Santa Monica, which have 361.
Yeah. Well, in Canada, I'm lucky to live in the South. In Northern Ontario, someone mentioned the other day they have one hospital for like a size of land. I forget exactly what the comparison was. It was like the size of like England or France or so. It was a huge territory, like a size of Texas or something. They got like one hospital for all these. It's like ridiculous. So look up that. Don't take my word for it. Look up that statistic or whatever. But it's and you go up to farther north, like Nunavut. They got nobody wants to go give them health care. Who wants to live in an igloo like they like to mock us or whatever?
Speaking of igloos, compounding care courts' false promises is affordable housing shortage. There is a shortage of 1 million affordable rental homes for extremely low-income renters, and the CARE Act does not appropriate one single penny for housing. Not one. The CARE Act pretends this backlog of services and housing does not exist, despite advocates' cries to increase funding for our behavioral health systems and affordable housing instead of funding new courts. If we invested in behavioral health and housing to their full level of need and give some time for the workforce to catch up, we would already have a better plan than the CARE Court. And then I just wanted to read this part. The biggest lie about CARE Court is that it is not involuntary treatment. CARE Court is an involuntary coercive system. There are consequences for not following through with a care plan. When a person does not comply with the exact terms of a care plan, the court must refer the person for conservatorship with the presumption the person needs additional intervention beyond the supports and services provided by the care plan.
So that is a way to take people's autonomy and self-determinism away from them, right?
Exactly. And then this existing laws already provide for involuntary treatment of persons found dangerous to themselves or others. But the CARE Act takes this giant step further by permitting a judge to impose restrictions on persons deemed likely to become dangerous. Likely.
Yeah, it's all about the reasonable interpretation from someone deemed allegedly reasonable. And those are the court people who are not
Right.
medical people.
Right. And I just want to say, so this was written by Helen Tran, which, I mean, I looked her up. She does have a pretty solid track record as an advocate for housing and impoverished people and for medical. I can just show you. But then I saw Richard Rothschild, and I was like, oh boy. I could not find anything beyond this this article on him. But I also, I mean, I just looked at his last name and I said, okay, let me just see if I could find anything else about him. But I wasn't able to. But yeah, this lady seems pretty solid in her time as a lawyer and her focuses throughout her career. And I'm not saying Rothschild doesn't seem solid. I just, that name just gave me pause, and that's all. So you guys can take from it what you will,
Right.
and leave the rest like we always do.
So that article you're showing me about the CARE Act, that reminded me of something. I hadn't planned on showing it, but because you're talking about the not getting new rights for people with schizophrenia and other psychotic disorders, I think it's probably worth quickly mentioning this.
Okay. Can you put both of us? Can you put both of us on?
Yeah, sorry.
No problem.
Yeah, I'm not quite used to. Oh, here we go.
And the chat is kind of blowing up a little bit.
Right.
Just a few, like at the end, and then we'll go to yours.
yeah, we'll take a look at some of these comments before we look at what I just pulled up here. So,
Yeah,
Americans,
just to
America
stay
pays
on topic.
for other countries' healthcare with taxpayer money, of course. It's the American way. Fiddlefur says morphine and pliers, talking about removing your own teeth. Said 10 years ago, my dad did that to get rid of a rotten tooth. It was too expensive. Oof.
Ooh.
Tough man.
Oh man, that had to hurt.
The northern area of Ontario has one major hospital in terms of the area of France. Yeah, thanks. That might have actually been a comment I heard from Fiddleford himself in another chat or whatever. But thank you for clarifying. So,
that's crazy.
Reimagine the product. That's
reimagine the society.
Yeah.
Reimagine the entire system.
Yeah. So this, what I wanted to show you is, it's called Fear Review. A critique of forensic psychopathy scale was delayed for 3 years by a threat of a lawsuit. Does an academic's use of legal threats to stop a critical paper from being published subvert the peer review process, which is fundamental to modern scientific research? A leading psychopathy researchers used the threat of legal action to have changes made to a research paper critical of a widely used criminological rating scale he developed 20 years ago. In the process, the paper, which was accepted for publication in 2007 by Psychological Assessment, was delayed 3 years. It finally appeared in the journal's June issue, but the whole affair has raised questions about how legal threats can impact the progress of psychological science. They're talking about the Hare psychopathy checklist revised, and there are some doubts as to the scientific validity of that checklist. So who do you think that they are labeling psychopaths? We know who we think are the psychopaths. Okay, we always say the billionaires are so psychopathic. These Joe Bidens of the world, they're psychopathic maniacs. But who is actually getting the label attached to them with the consequences that go with it? They are the people getting those 72-hour involuntary commitments that if they do not, that is like a jail in the hospital, where if they don't follow the orders they're given, and there are consequences. They're treated like a safe, dangerous, and there are many dangerous people dealing. I'm not trying to minimize that, right? But you make it worse when you see a boogeyman or whatever and you typecast them into this role forever. So it's.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's such a projection. It's unreal. I remember one of my friends was telling me that, like, who's to say that they're the crazy ones? Maybe us who are like going around every day, going to work, just doing the day-to-day grind, we have numbed our soul to survive. And maybe they're just more sensitive than us, and they're more authentic, and they can't numb themselves to the point of submission like we seem to have done. And they're like, okay, he's out pissing in the street. Maybe we all should be out pissing in the street. I don't know. Like, something seems off. Thank you.
Yeah. There's a meme that I heard about the recruiters. It's like a joke. They're saying they're having a hard time recruiting, getting them the recruitment numbers up or whatever. And then they asked the guy with a sign in 90-degree heat, whatever, you want a job or whatever. And he said, tell them to F off or whatever. So then it's like, so then the joke is that the military recruiter is like, I'm just going to go get a bottle of bourbon and sit on a park bench and think about life for a while. Because this guy in 90-degree heat, whatever, getting a minimum wage, not being able to pay for an apartment, whatever, living out of their car, still doesn't want to join the army, where we would take him through college.
I am so glad you mentioned that, because this wasn't really the topic of today. But remember how we had done, like, I was talking about immigration and trying to figure out, like, why are they flooding the country with immigrants when just during the Obama era he deported more immigrants than any president before him, and Trump continued it, but not even at the rate that Obama was doing it. He got more media time for it, they made it seem like he was, the bad guy. I'm not saying he's a good guy, but he really deported less people than Obama. And I was thinking, oh, they're trying to flood with low wages because, that guy, the avocado toast dude, was like, we need to put some hurt into the economy and let these workers know that, you're acting a little too entitled. Okay, so that's one theory. But here's another one, because Dick Durbin was on the Senate floor. He's a senator, right? I can't remember. Senator House floor, I can't remember which one he is. Saying that we need to give these immigrants a fast pathway to citizenship if they join our military. Yeah. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. So they don't want to fight in their own country.
It's like a light bulb, right?
Yeah, they don't want to fight in their own country to make their own country better, but they want to come over here and fight in our army and navy, and something doesn't sound right. So it's like they're playing on their desperation, and I'm like, okay, nobody wants to join these failed institutions anymore. Nobody wants to fight your wars. Nobody wants to send their child off to possibly die just so they can go to school.
Yeah, and bringing it back to mental health a little bit, one of those silver linings, I guess you could say, is if they deem you crazy, you are not really allowed in the army. So as much as they want to be treating people like they're so retarded, or not the right word to use, right? But
right, not the right word.
Like that, like morons, okay? Then you actually suffer the consequence of now you don't have, according to the law, the right to force them into the army, except that we see, like in Ukraine, whatever, if push comes to shove, and I think in like the UK and stuff, and if it happens there, it'll happen here. But they will change that rule where previously they're not allowed to take the mentally unstable or physically unfit, whatever. But they'll change the rule. They'll make you go anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Like in Ukraine, I've seen a video of a person with Down syndrome on the front line. And that was disturbing, very disturbing.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, they had him in armor with a rifle, from what I can tell. Probably didn't give him no bullets. They're probably using him as a target, right?
Because so many of their young men have died in that war.
Yeah, so.
That is insane. I'm going to have to Google that.
Allegation or whatever, grain of salt, YouTube censors. I don't know what I'm talking about when I do.
Allegedly. There, I fixed it for you.
Yeah. So what are we going to move? Voice. Do we know what we're moving to next year?
Well, do you have more?
Yeah.
I wanted to talk a little bit about displacement. But I could do that after you're finished.
Okay, so
I'm going to try to be quick, and then how we were talking about what is all this happening for. I'm going to go a little dark in the end with a video from Jimmy Dore
and Tucker Carlson.
And Alex Jones.
Right. Always fun, whatever.
I actually used to listen to Alex Jones until he started seeming a little cuckoo to me. Mm-hmm. But I did listen to him because I like to listen to everyone. And I take what I want from it and I leave the rest. But if you don't listen, how are you going to be able to critically think for yourself, just compare and contrast the opinions in your own head? Otherwise, if you're just letting people tell you how to feel and how to think. So I even listen to Tucker Carlson a little now that he's not on Fox News. I do not like the fact that everybody's welcoming him with open arms when he never apologized for being a racist piece of shit on Fox News. But still, he was an insider, so he has insider information, and you got to know your enemy. So I don't have any respect for him for
you got to pick your battles, right?
Yeah. I don't have any respect for him. I want to make that clear, but I do listen to him.
Right. So, but we're not quite getting. That'll be at the end. So I was talking about the China and the fentanyl crisis. So what I was going to move to next was so they claim that the China is the main supplier, but I feel like if we want to do a bit of digging, we'll find that there is other culprits maybe that we could blame for this kind of thing. So this
Okay,
is.
why?
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, while you were queuing that up, I just wanted to say these two chats because they're
Yeah.
relevant to what we were just talking about.
Sure.
So I don't want to lose the moment of the conversation.
This one here.
Yeah, which is why true student loan forgiveness is so hard to happen. How else would they convince young, vulnerable people to join the military? Yeah. I mean, they're trying to do a little bit of it now because they're trying to buy votes. But as CJ pointed out, that student loan forgiveness is payment for the vote you already gave Biden. It's not it's not to convince you to vote for him in 2024. You already paid your debt for that student loan forgiveness by voting for him in 2020. So what has he given you since 2020 to make you vote for him again? So I just want to point that part out. And then there's one more. An argument is funding for needed development in said countries and allowing immigrant workers same pay and benefits make it difficult for employer exploitation.
Yeah, if you want to stop these immigrant workers, maybe let them get paid more where their country of origin is, and they won't feel the need to come there.
Mm-hmm.
But the logic of capitalism, always contradicts itself. So,
Yeah. Okay, so we've cleared out our chats, and we can move on to the next.
all right. So this is from the Center for Strategic and International Studies. I'm sure many of you have probably heard of them, just like a think tank. Anyway, this is an article from March 23rd, 2018, about opioids in India. So the opioid crisis continues to claim thousands of lives every month across the United States, blah, blah, blah. The refrain never ends, driven in part by fentanyl manufactured in China. But it's another opioid, tramadol, that threatens to wreak global havoc, and another Asian giant that is pouring it into the world. So there's always another less dangerous but still dangerous thing in the hierarchy of what could kill you that is not necessarily being focused on, because the bigger the bigger monster gets all the attention. So China is the number one supplier, allegedly, of fentanyl to the United States. So this is from that think tank. So you have to be very well aware. But even when they're trying to propagandize you, the reason why I called this up, you'll still find some interesting information. So China is also allegedly the main supplier to Canada and Mexico. Cartels in the latter usually then smuggle it into the United States, allegedly. Of course, not just allegedly. We all know the Mexican cartels are a huge problem. But be aware that with pharmaceutical drugs, that can go the other way as well, from the States to Mexico. So after years of persistent efforts, the U.S.-China bilateral crackdown on opioid trafficking has started to see recent success. In mid-October, 2 Chinese nationals were indicted for running a large illicit fentanyl distribution network, and their 3 American accomplices were arrested. So they frame it as if the Chinese are the ones in charge. I feel like it's entirely possible that the Americans were maybe the ones in charge. Who knows, right? India exports many controlled and prescription drugs to the United States, including fentanyl. Indian fentanyl exports to the United States are a fraction of those from China, allegedly, but India does export tramadol, which is a growing issue for the United States. However, unlike China, which has now designated over 100 fentanyl variants and precursors on its list of controlled substances, India has not placed fentanyl or most other opioids on its controlled substances list, easing production and export. India only regulates 17 of the 24 basic precursor chemicals for fentanyl, as listed by the UN 1988 Convention Against Drugs. So how is it that China is the bigger supplier of the illegal precursors, the precursors that should be illegal? If the precursors are illegal in China but not in India, so maybe officially their exports are technically lower from the actual pharmaceutical official companies. But when we're talking about illegal smuggling, then we're not really going to have all the numbers to analyze. So I would suggest that this is a bit of a relevant detail not to be forgotten that would point you in the right direction.
And we also have to think about America as it relates to Taiwan right now, and so there could be half truths to that and half smears, purposefully.
Yeah.
So it's good to have the information in the back of your head, but believe half of what you see and some of what you hear. That's what my father always told me.
Yeah, and then keep in mind the history with the opium wars. The drug trafficking route was from China into India to the global market, wherever Britain wanted the product to go. So that's the kind of like the ancient trade route that's probably very much still in place. So,
And we were in Afghanistan for decades.
Yep.
And they are a opioid producing country.
Right. And who's stopping Imran Khan from getting into power in Pakistan, right? Where did a lot of that production go after the Taliban eradicated a large amount of that production from the Afghanistan territory? Then I think a lot of it went to Pakistan and India and probably China and Myanmar, right? But other places. But let me just finish up here. In the Middle East and Africa, the less potent opioid tramadol, not fentanyl, is responsible for the opioid crisis. India is the biggest supplier. Although I have another article that mentions how Israel now is the #1 consumer of opiates. So, and I think that their problem is a fentanyl problem. So maybe Israel is the exception to the rule in Middle East and Africa, where the poor Arab countries have access to tramadol, and rich subsidized Israel gets all the same problems as the West. Go figure. So tramadol is prescribed as a pain medication, but because of tramadol's stimulant effects, it can allow people to feel high functioning while taking dangerously high doses. This combination is dangerous. Cities with high tramadol abuse have reported increasingly high rates of traffic accidents. So similar, if you remember, the COVID trope about how people with jabs were getting in car accidents, and people were claiming that every car accident therefore had something to do with they were calling them vaxidants, right? So here's another example of a different substance being capable of producing that exact same phenomenon. So in Garua, Cameroon, hospitals can trace 80% of all traffic accidents resulting in hospital visits to tramadol, suggesting that at least half of adults in the city use tramadol. To make it even more apparent how dire tramadol addiction has become, hospital staff reported that people waiting for patients outside of the hospital gates would start convulsing, the sign of a tramadol overdose. In some countries, tramadol deaths outnumber heroin deaths. In the past year, U.S. law enforcement officials estimate that 1 billion tramadol tablets have been seized, leaving India by the United States and its international partners in counter-narcotics, and actual exports could be exponentially greater, right? So we think we just got the tip of the iceberg of the problem, really. Southeast Asian countries, which also do not regulate tramadol, are frequently used as transit countries with tramadol repackaged in creative ways. Often, the tramadol is not seized until it reaches the Middle East. The former Drug Enforcement Administration attaché for South Asia, the India Country Office, reported that Libya has emerged as a significant hub for tramadol trafficking, and the vast majority of these tramadol shipments originated from India via commercial shipping containers. Indian tramadol networks have even been linked to, surprise, surprise, ISIS and Boko Haram, raising security concerns. There have been several instances of seizures of tramadol from India destined for Islamic State territory. Since tramadol is not on the international drug schedule, It is only regulated if individual countries decide to classify it. But if only one country classifies the drug and places it under regulation, it will not necessarily affect the supply. This was a problem for Egypt, which scheduled tramadol in hope of curbing abuse. Despite this, Indian tramadol exports to Egypt continue to rise, and tramadol is the most abused drug in Egypt today. Since tramadol was not on the international drug schedule, which, why not? You'll see why. India was not obligated to notify Egypt of an upcoming tramadol export. So isn't that nice? Where you have people shipping drugs to your country and they don't even have to tell you that they're sending it. That's retarded. I got to stop using that word. 30% of adults abused drugs, a report in Egypt in 2013. I highlighted that because I saw another statistic that was ironic. It was talking about how 30% of adults are considered to be having at least some kind of mild form of being psychotic or whatever, antisocial personality or whatever. So there's 30% of adults are kind of like a sociopath is what they're saying. And apparently 30% of adults abuse drugs. So it's like, but statistics, right, are taken with a grain of salt or a pound, right? One potential reason India does not regulate tramadol is the lack of domestic concern about addiction, which is mind-boggling. Government acknowledgement has not been sufficient. Government corruption plays a role with the pharmaceutical corporations, wholesale exporters, and internet companies responsible for the illicit flow of opioids out of India. In their 2017 report on corruption, Transparency International found that India had the highest bribery rates across the Asia-Pacific region. But listen, China's the big bad guy, right? Okay, India's never done anything wrong, even though they're the ones who've been capitalist this whole time. Okay. The WHO used the case of Egypt scheduling tramadol in 2002 and upscheduling, labeling it as a greater threat in 2009, presented by a German pharmaceutical company as evidence that when tramadol is scheduled, consumption for legitimate medical use declines. Although the WHO acknowledges that tramadol is widely abused and that there have been huge seizures of the drug, decided against critical review and international controls, because then they won't be able to use it as often as they do legitimately. So are they really using it in the legitimate sense when they say that there's an official reason to use it? Is that even also a legitimate purpose? Or are there often maybe better alternatives that they should be using that they're not because they like to use the drugs they already know and prefer because they have a bias? Anyway, it is easily purchased by ISIS and anyone who does a Google search for tramadol from India. So are we arresting anyone from Google on this? Probably not. As the world pays closer attention to fentanyl from China, there is room for another major supplier to the United States. India has been slow to regulate precursor chemicals and does not regulate fentanyl or tramadol. Indian traffickers have developed the worldwide networks. Right? So that's kind of, it's funny that comes from their own think tanks kind of thing, right? Kind of tells the whole story.
So I had to look this up because I was like, what? Vaccines? So I was thinking, well, maybe from like somebody getting a heart attack from myocarditis and getting in an accident or something. Yeah. This says the concept labeled vaccines is accidental side effects after receiving the vaccine. So myocarditis, I don't know if I'm probably not saying that properly.
A heart, or it could be a stroke.
Tetanitis.
It could be the brain.
All that stuff.
Yeah. And
that's so crazy because I've never heard that term, vaccines, and I have watched extensive. I knew I was close. Extensive videos and read extensive articles on it. Robert Malone, the whole nine. And I've never heard that term vaccines. So that's awesome.
Well, I got that from, this is a good moment to plug The Last American Vagabond. He was a good source, in my opinion, on the COVID situation. Heavily censored and banned and shadow banned and all that stuff. So if you want to, I don't know if you'll be able to dig in looking back now after all these years to find the best videos, really. But you should be able to go to his website, thelastamericanvagabond.com, and you should be able to watch all kinds of things. He's been really good on like COVID, we'll say the medical frauds that go along with that kind of thing. He's also a bit conspiratorial. You might be offended a bit from his positions on LGBTQ stuff like that, but he's also very good on Palestine and Israel. So.
Take what you can, leave the rest. And might I just add that the COVID vaccine is safe and effective. So this is just our opinion. Take the jab, please. Thanks,
and then
Charlie
maybe
Brown
go to McDonald's,
Politics.
right?
Thanks, Charlie Brown Politics, for reminding us of that disclaimer, allegedly. Okay, so
right here.
Oh, okay, yeah. I'm gonna plow through this. This has nothing to do with. I mean, well, I could have went into how the CIA flooded the Black community with drugs. I probably should have started with that so I can segue into this, but I can speak on it really quickly. Charles Webb, may he rest in power, whistle blew on the CIA that they were flooding Black neighborhoods purposely with crack cocaine. And he was found unalive and suicided, allegedly. Can we change this bottom to, I don't know, revolutionary, something like that? And hey, you guys that are watching at home, go ahead and hit that like button for us. That would be awesome. We forget to ask, but that would be very helpful.
Yeah, maybe I'll just change it to that.
Smash that like button.
There you go.
Yeah, so let's start with that. So everybody knows that story already, and that's why they ramped up the war on drugs, and that was that first wave of putting Black men in prison at astounding numbers, and changing the laws for cocaine versus crack, and then the weed laws, all that great stuff. Everybody knows all this already. Okay, but some things people don't really take into account is how many times thriving Black communities in this country have been displaced. Okay, so this is from CNN. This is showing Black massacres in the United States. These racial violence took aim at the roots of generational wealth, shaping the nation and its inequalities in ways we still see today. And so these are like relatively Black communities that had their own schools, their own, like they were self-sufficient within themselves, and somehow somebody claimed some white woman got raped, or somebody looked at her or something, and then they would come through and burn the town down. Okay, so they got displaced those ways. Everybody like talks about Tulsa, Oklahoma. That's the one that's more commercialized because it was called Black Wall Street. But there were several places like that throughout the country, and those dots reflect that. Okay, so that is CNN. It's a CNN article, Whitewashing of America. It's pretty interesting, but I just wanted to show that. And then just real quick, I'm just going to go through these. These are racial violence in the United States since 1526. Now, some of these are revolts. Some of these are massacres. They even have like riots, like racial riots on here. So it's very long because of that. But I just wanted to see the chaos. I wanted you to see the chaos for yourselves and generational chaos that the Black community has to deal with. And it just goes on and on and on and on and on.
Yeah, it reminds me, I showed you that list of all the Jews displaced from all the places all over the world or whatever. This is a similar kind of a list of all the pogroms of the black communities, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it does. And I'm not going to play this with sound so we won't get hit, but there are a lot of Black communities that were taken from just the displacement where they just ran the people out of the town, took over the town for whatever public reason. Like Central Park in New York City was a whole entire Black community. And they just took the land for the purpose of building a park. Well, that has happened in various places in this country, and they built lakes on top of these communities. So she kind of went through three, but then she's showing all these other cities where lakes are actually built on top of Black communities. So I just wanted to show that because I thought that was pretty interesting.
Oh, that is very interesting. I never knew that. So thank you.
Yeah. So this is Beyond Tulsa, the secret history of flooding Black towns to make lakes. So if you wanted to watch the visual, but of course you could Google it for articles to get more extensive into it, like this article. Well, this one is more about more international displacement. Oh, I know what I wanted to do. I wanted to highlight, I'm going to the resources, and I wanted to highlight the ripple effect of displacement so people could like really understand the toll that being moved over and over and over again takes on a community, and how that really affects your ability to, I don't know where it is. Well, luckily I already pulled it up. How it affects your ability to move forward and gain wealth and capitalize on the wealth that you've already gained, generational wealth, whatnot. So internal displacements impacts the livelihoods, education, health, security, social life, environment, and access to housing and infrastructure of displaced people. Should I make that bigger? Let me make that bigger.
Yeah, thank you.
There we go.
I'm not sure how much people like to read along, but if they do, they have the option.
The effects of internal displacement on each dimension ripple through to others. Health can be affected by loss of livelihoods, poor housing conditions, and disrupted social life. We learned that a lot during COVID, where everybody was locked down. The amount of suicide rates increased. People, their anxiety and stress levels increased, things of that
People's
nature.
health in general was just deteriorated by being cooped up. Like it's not how you're meant to live. So.
We're social creatures.
Yeah.
Loss of livelihoods due to internal displacement can limit access to decent shelter, healthcare, and education, and jeopardize security and social life. The internal displacement's consequences on livelihoods and school systems can reduce access to education and security. And we kind of already know that, like, well, our policy on education doesn't really help because they don't, it's based on property taxes. It's not like all the property taxes are pooled and then shared equally, right? It's based on the property tax in your community. So if you're continuously being displaced and you're missing out on financial wealth because of the trauma of the displacement, of course you're not going to be able to have the same type of property taxes as someone who hasn't had that effect on them. So it reduces access to education. Yeah. Shelter is one of the highest burdens on displaced people. Host and aid providers financial resources and affects security and health. They're kind of being redundant a little bit in some of these. The environmental impact of mass internal displacement is heavily dependent on housing, infrastructure, and livelihood solutions with effects on security for both displaced people and host communities. Because that's a really important one, because there are a lot of like cancer alleys and stuff like that where Black people were pushed to in those displacements, because that land nobody wants to live next to a power plant that is emitting,
or an oil rig.
Exactly. You get the drill, yes. And the disruption of social life caused by displacement kind of like COVID, can damage mental health and access to work, and is connected to housing conditions. And the impact of internal displacement must be assessed comprehensively for all of these dimensions, which it is not. Because to me, that part right there basically says, okay, America, cut the damn check, but we're still belaboring that point. Like it all just goes back to slavery, when it's actually slavery and all of the conditions after slavery still up until this point. So let me move on. So this is from the ACLU. It's called Racism by Design, the Building of Interstate 81. So the Interstate Highway System birthed the Federal Aid Highway Act 1956, which was the largest public works program the country had ever embarked upon. More than 40,000 miles of highway were planned and built steadily through the 60s and 70s as a driver of economic progress, not for us, but economic progress just the same. And as the civil rights movement was gaining momentum, the highway system became a way to enforce segregation through other quite literal means. So-called slum clearance destroyed under-resourced but thriving working-class Black neighborhoods while enhancing the flow of white communities and tax dollars to the suburbs. Communities of color were cut off from developing downtown centers, and not just freeways, but also refineries, landfills, and power plants were dumped in non-white areas labeled sacrifice communities. Okay, I think that's what I was just saying. Okay, great. I'm almost done, y'all. I'm almost done. So this is the History Channel talking about how Black neighborhoods were decimated. I'm just going to read this short little thing right here. And I have a visual map because I'm a visual person. I like to I'm not as
Pictures
much.
says 1,000 words. Eh?
Yeah, I'm a tactile learner, but I'm also a visual person. So I guess I'm trying to do both here. But anyway, Black neighborhoods were decimated. In the first half of the 20th century, so that's the 1900s, Miami's culturally vibrant Black community of Overtown was widely considered the Harlem of the South and Little Broadway. But after the passage of the 1956 highway bill, the expansion of I-95 through Miami led to the destruction of 87 acres of housing and community property in the community. According to Richard Rothstein's The Color of Law, a forgotten history of how our government segregated America, only 8,000 of an estimated population of 40,000 remain in Overtown after the highway expansion. Blocked from moving into white neighborhoods, displaced residents were forced to crowd into nearby sections of the city, already struggling with poverty and urban decay. So look, my
glad you covered that, because it reminded me last week I was mentioning the telecom cartels, but I had forgotten to cover the part about how they're redlining and they're charging Black communities like twice as much kind of thing for the services, for the exact same service that they'd offer for the white community.
Yep.
So, in every way, like people, and somehow people still dismiss that there's anti-Black racism, but they're coming at your communities in every way possible.
Yep. Every way possible. Yep. I didn't even mention redlining in this. I was just going to say it because that's more evident to people. People know about redlining, but they don't know about the lakes and the redline
gerrymandered communities.
Yeah. Yeah.
Double-edged sword.
Yeah, she's fired up.
Yeah.
I know she, and I get it. My chest is feeling hot right now just talking about it. So what it looks like to reconnect Black communities torn apart by highways. This is the visual one I wanted to show you. So this is pre-highway blocks. So this map shows the Rondo neighborhood in St. Paul, Minnesota. So we talked about Miami. Now we're in St. Paul. I'm just giving examples, but it happened all through the the United States. In the first half of the 20th century, it was home to most of St. Paul's African American residents. Well, I like to say foundational Black Americans myself, but bounded by University Avenue in the north and Shelby Avenue in the south, the neighborhood center was Rondo Avenue, a thriving corridor for Black-owned business and wealth. So it's going to show you some of the stores that were there. And then it's going to show you what it looked like after. So see where the stores are. So they just plowed the interstate right on top of them on purpose.
Right. Yeah. It's similar to when we're to bring it to have an opportunity to mention Palestine again is like similar to that Ben Gurion Canal thing, where it just so happens that their plan that they have yet to implement or whatever, if you give them the opportunity, they would definitely put a pipeline or a road or whatever right through where the community is already existing. So.
Right. Can you show both of us?
Yeah. Sorry. Oh,
no problem. I'm just
bad at
done.
that.
No, I'm just done. So yeah. I wanted to show all of that because we were kind of talking about the chaos on purpose. And like you said, the latest displacement is gentrification. You know, like how are we supposed to? I believe it's done on purpose to keep us discombobulated and unorganized. So there's no room for the next true leader to emerge and corral all the working class people together. Like they don't want another Fred Hampton or MLK or to emerge. So they keep us just always on the ready, like always needing to recover from something.
Right. Yeah, and just like the Palestinians, is like the more that they try and oppress the community like that to prevent that hero from rising, they're creating that person by the exact these actions that they're taking, you know, out of fear. So.
Right. So disclaimer, that's all I have. And disclaimer. So I wanted to play, it's kind of long.
Well, there's a few things I thought I should show. Maybe I'm going to cut a few of them or whatever, but I did want to at least share the article because I was talking about India being a supplier of the illicit drug supply, but I think it's important that we get on the record that Canada is also, it has become known officially, accepted information that the fentanyl problem is homegrown, produced by Canada. We are exporting it to you as much as it's coming from Mexico and wherever else. The Canadian-made fentanyl is an international problem, RCMP says. So seizures of fentanyl precursors at the border have surged. Law enforcement numbers show they are seizing fentanyl precursors coming from Canada going to the States. So they can blame it on China all they like or whatever, but you guys got to be concerned about us probably more. So the head of the RCMP unit responsible for fighting organized crime says Canada is not just a significant producer, we also export it of fentanyl. Organized crime groups in Canada are using precursor chemicals to produce the deadly drug for both the domestic market and for sales abroad, Matthew Bertrand said in an interview with CBC's The House. Bertrand, chief superintendent of serious and organized crime and border integrity at RCMP, said that while Canada has a problem with fentanyl imports, domestic production is what alarms police most at the moment. Although the politicians will not tell you this at all. Okay. The fact that gangs in Canada are exporting fentanyl means either that there's a glut on the market here or there are more lucrative markets abroad. He added. So don't necessarily need to read all of that. That kind of says it all, right? So just to point the finger where it needs to be pointed.
I'm sorry. I didn't realize you weren't done with your segment.
I did that backwards. Probably over prepared like I usually do. I could maybe just share my screen just to show you the headlines at least of what I wanted to share. So
Okay, and while you're queuing that up, Tosmit says, imagine if Black success wasn't destroyed and left. And if they hate Black people so much, why is it so hard to leave Blackness alone? That's funny.
so
Is it
this
really
one,
gangs or our, oh, I'm sorry. Fiddleford's
sorry.
catalog says, is it really gangs or are our industries directly contributing?
Right.
I
think
it's the latter,
I
not
think
the
the gangs
former.
are an easy scapegoat, and then you have to
Yeah.
ask who's the undercover officer supplying the, like, just like the January 6th situation. Who's the plant inside the organization who's the one pulling the strings, right?
Yeah. The gangs are the low hanging fruit, right? And
Yeah,
some of the gangs are on the payroll.
they're the easy easy punching bag, right?
It's
So
like even with the migrants who they busted this warehouse and jailed all the migrants, but the CEO didn't go to jail. Like none of the top executives of the company went to jail.
yeah,
It's the low hanging fruit that went to jail.
it's amazing how classic that story has become, right? So
Every industry.
So you see how this first one I was showing, this primary healthcare access among First Nations people, doesn't really explain much in the title, but basically, if you had to take a guess, would you think that Indigenous people in Canada are have better access to healthcare or not? Because the statistics show you that like First Nations people living off reserve are reported to be like higher percentages without regular healthcare providers.
Can you make it a little bigger for me?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Is that good?
Perfect.
So significantly higher proportions of people living off reserve and across Canada reported being without regular health care. Higher proportions of men and young adults compared with women and older among all three Indigenous groups and non-Indigenous people. Regionally, around 1/2 of First Nations people living off reserve and Métis reported not having registered regular healthcare provider. Among Inuit, over 8 in 10 did not have one, compared to 73% among non-Indigenous. Like I said, up north, good luck getting healthcare. Basically, know how to take care of yourself.
So it's more of a access. They have access to healthcare,
Right, like you're saying, they
like
technically
us.
have access, but they don't really, because they don't have. They have like they just don't have the doctors, like the manpower to provide the services. In the South, we have more. We have a lot more doctors, but we have like really long wait times. Like that.
Why aren't they able to get government IDs?
With this one, with the Canadians living without IDs, I'll just read this.
Oh, that's separate from. I'm sorry, I thought that was the
this is
reason why they weren't getting the health care. Okay,
yeah.
okay, that's
So the
separate.
First Nations maybe have better. I'm not sure. I maybe shouldn't speak without awareness or whatever, but they maybe are able to get their identifications, but then they just get discriminated for being First Nations. And then up north, it's really expensive and it's just difficult to get supplies up there all the time. But in general, like
Yeah, I just didn't
for
realize.
more like white Canadians, I guess, or whatever, a lot, especially with the drug users and stuff and the homeless, they will lose their ID. And there's all kinds of reasons why that could happen. So I'll give you a little anecdote from this guy. It says, for 15 years, McLaughlin had been trying tirelessly to prove to the Canadian government that he exists. He'd taken trips to Service Canada and Service Ontario offices to get a social insurance document, a health card, a citizenship certificate. Even though he once owned those pieces of ID, nobody would give him any replacements. Each one of the receptionist, clerks, and officers McLaughlin spoke to told him he needed to show supplementary identification, which is the huge problem. This double confirmation that they want to do with everything now. Like I don't know what, two-factor authentication, whatever they call it. So a birth certificate, a social insurance card, a driver's license, a passport. Without another type of ID, you're just not who you are. You're not who you were born. You are who the ID says you are. So he went to his old elementary school to try to search for copies of his birth certificate, but the school no longer kept the records. He found 2 separate lawyers who agreed to advise him pro bono on how to get ID, but neither of them were able to solve the problem. The only thing that could get me were more copies of the documents, which aren't good enough. They would not accept those. So one time he walked into the police headquarters in downtown Toronto, where he knew they had information on file because he had a criminal record, and he asked the officers to fingerprint him and take his photograph and vouch for him as a Canadian citizen. I'm in your system. You know who I am, he pleaded. None of these tactics worked. So if you lose access to your ID for whatever reason, good luck proving that you're a Canadian citizen, basically. And then this other one briefly, pay-as-you-go healthcare. Uninsured people in Canada face sky-high bills. So how do you get in Canada and be uninsured? Well, long story short, they could be landed immigrants, which mandate a 3-month waiting period before provincial health benefits kick in, which makes no sense. Why do the regulations make no sense? I don't know. You tell me. So they could also be temporary foreign workers who remain in Canada after their contracts ended, refugee claimants, or people seeking asylum. So everyone wants to dog whistle about immigrants being the problem or whatever, but when they're here or whatever, they're treated like they're not even people, okay? So there's another anecdote from this woman or whatever. She's been working under the table at a factory for the last 18 years and babysitting jobs, sending money back home to family. She would have been able to apply for permanent residency after working for 24 months over 3 years in the then live-in caregiver program. I don't know what that is, whatever. But she says she lost her job and status after being hunted by her abusive husband. So, yeah, domestic violence happens to it with immigrants too, or whatever, okay? And maybe if you're in a job situation or program or whatever, you're in a position to be blackmailed. So if you don't maybe want to do something you shouldn't have to keep your job or whatever, to get access to citizenship, you're not going to have health care, right? But it's all good, right? No, nothing to see here. So, And then just briefly, 7 years into crisis, the drug crisis, politicians still struggle to see drug users as people, right? To see immigrants as people, to see Black people as people. You get LGBTQ as people, right? They still struggle, but let's wait for them. They'll come around, right? No worries. Give Biden another chance, right? 4 more years. So that's my stuff. We can move to your video if you like.
Yeah, I just want so I understand the part about in Canada, the migrants aren't seen as people, and that's true here until now for some reason, and they're like being seen as higher people than they're being put in the Black neighborhoods and given resources, money, all of these things that Black people are like, wait, what happened? You know, they closed down schools in New York for migrants to live in the school, and then the students had to go to school from home. And they were like, some of the teachers aren't even showing up, you know, like the same kind of craziness with COVID. Because they can't, there's too many people coming in, and it's already a condensed area in the sanctuary cities for Black communities. And then you're piling migrants on top of them.
Yeah, they're definitely creating a crisis on purpose.
Yes, they are. They're definitely creating a crisis. So I'm not quite sure. Can I play this entire Jimmy Dore thing? It's like 20 minutes. I'm not sure. Will we get
20 minutes. That's
flag for it?
Yeah. We could probably put it like a bit of faster speed. 1.5 is probably a little too fast. They'll sound like chipmunks or whatever, but
I could play it on faster speed.
1.25 speed would probably take 21 minutes and turn it into like 18 or 17 or.
Oh, is that what? Okay, so 175 would be too much?
Yeah, I'd say 1.25 would be. You could see what it sounds like, but I think it also
sounds like. And I want to get your
kind of
reaction
lags it a bit.
If you live in a society where the people in charge just want to sell you out to get rich, that's bad. But that's not what we're watching.
How's that sound?
So it sounds maybe a little too fast. Like if it glitches and it's fast, it might be hard to understand what they're saying. So it's.
So you want me to go to 1.25, and then we won't get dinged for it?
Well, I don't know if we'll get dinged or not.
I was just gonna
I
let
think
it
we
play
have to
all the
offer
way
some
through.
kind of commentary on it, but then it's not, if it's not playing like copyright music or something, it's probably okay.
No, it's not. It's not.
Yeah, I would say for a critique of Jimmy, so that we may play his video, I did notice that he was potentially playing some medical, a health article from the Epoch Times, I think it might have been. It said Epoch Health. So I'm
I'm going
not
to show
sure.
this clip from.
I don't know if he should be concerned about sharing health information from the Epoch Times. So they're known to be connected with the Falun Gong cult. Okay, very anti-communist, right? Just big red flag. Okay. Anyways, and also, Jimmy, if you ever listen or whatever, be wary of the Carl Jung. You should look into whether or not Carl Jung was an anti-Semite. There's an article about that. Okay. Anyway.
Take what you want, leave the rest. Yeah. Okay, so I can't, for some reason, I can't change the setting anymore. So we're gonna have to go with the speed that I picked the first time. Now, trigger warning. This is kind of macabre, but also it does have a sense of reality to me. But I don't know how. Like, I don't know what the end game is. But I do know these people like act like sociopaths and psychopaths, the way the policies they implement. I do know that. I mean, that's been pretty obvious for I don't know how many decades now. But Alex Jones does only, every time he talks about these type of people, he only mentions the name of a Democrat, which I thought was telling because they're all the same, two wings of one bird. So if you can like put that out of your head and just hear the message of the intent and the purpose, maybe that'll help. And it's far-fetched too. So
with Alex Jones, he'll find some kernel of factual truth, and then he tends to be an entertainer about it. So once you know that, then just try and be aware of what's being exaggerated for entertainment purposes, right? Use your critical thinking, like we all do. So.
Exactly. So you can just, I'm just going to play it out, and if anybody wants to comment, we can continue to put your comments up. But we are leaving after this video. We won't be returning, but this is for your enjoyment. And so I'd like to thank you all for sticking in with us. I'd like to thank Revolutionary Blackout Network for the opportunity. I want to give a shout out to the Social Contract and to Beyond the Arc. Beyond the Arc is on Sundays at 8 p.m. Central. And anything else for you, Michael?
Social Contract on Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern or 12 p.m. Central. So, yeah.
Tiana XOXO has joined the chat.
Oh, well, welcome, late comer.
We're about to be out of here, Tiana.
Feel free to rewind and take a look. Thanks for coming, everyone. Hopefully
we appreciate you.
Next week. Hopefully we'll have some, well, I don't know, but hopefully we'll see if there will be lighter material next week or not. We don't want to be too biased with a positive, toxic positivity, and we don't want to be too cynical and negative. So let's try and stay balanced. Isn't that the way?
Stay balanced. And I also just want to give a shout out to John H, who was kind of like in the chat, like dipping their toe in. So we never acknowledge you. So thank you for joining, and we appreciate
thank you, John H,
all of you.
And have a good weekend, everyone.
Tucker Carlson, it's a very short clip, and I wanted to get your reaction to it.
If you live in a society where the people in charge just want to sell you out to get rich, that's bad. But that's not what we're watching. We're watching something much darker than that. So the objective of, I would say, the entire administration and its enablers in the Republican Party, which is most elected officials there, is to destroy the United States, the recognizable United States, the country you grew up in, the country you've been living in, say, 10 years ago. And that's kind of obvious to everyone. But too few people pause and ask, well, what is that? Like, these people live here. They don't all have secret island getaways, especially now that Epstein is gone. And so if they succeed in their project of destroying the United States, where are they going to go? It's a little bit like burning your own house down. So why would you do that? That's not just an act of destruction, it's an act of self-destruction. So is that a political program? No. A political program is designed to help the people who institute it and their voters and donors. Their program helps nobody.
Step into Wix Studio, the new web creation platform built for agencies.
So I've been kind of developing my own theory on this, Alex, so if you remember a couple of weeks ago, Xi Jinping visited San Francisco. And if you've ever been to San Francisco, there's homeless people everywhere. Well, they cleaned that up for Xi Jinping to come there. And just like, so a couple of years ago, Gavin Newsom announced that there was a $40 billion surplus. You can put Alex up. There was a $40 billion surplus in California. And I was like, well, I bet he's going to clean up homelessness and he's going to give people health care. And they did nothing. They did nothing with that $40 billion. And now they're saying it's all gone. And I don't know. And no one knows where it went. And so we know that they could end homelessness in America for a fraction of the money that they sent to Ukraine at the blink of an eye.
And restart it and end it again.
That's right. They could have fixed it 4 or 5 times over, and they could have sent everybody to college for free. They won't do any of that. So I'm developing this theory that they're wanting us to be on edge, and they want us, just like Tucker had talked about it when he was on our show. They want you to, when you go to the 7-Eleven, you have to step over a homeless person and everything's locked up behind cages, and you're going to get a crazy person screaming at you so that you will welcome authoritarianism, right? Just like what the terrorist attack on 9/11 did. We became a surveillance state. People gave up their freedoms. By the way, the Patriot Act was on a shelf for years. They were waiting to implement that. And so people just forgot that every email, every text, every phone call they make is being recorded and categorized and collected by the government. And so I'm starting to develop a theory they keep saying that Trump and Trumpers are going to start a civil war. The people starting a civil war are the corporate media, which are beholden to a handful of billionaires, which are beholden to no country. And it's like they want us fighting. They want us at each other's throats. They want homelessness here. That's why they won't fix it. They want everybody to be on edge and afraid. And that's what and they're wrecking the country. That's why the border's open for many reasons. But we'll talk about that in a second. But just go ahead and respond to what I said and what Tucker said.
Well, that's a profound clip by Tucker. I've heard him say similar things, but I hadn't seen that clip. And I really am an expert on this because I read the writings voluminously of kind of the high priest of these people that you all know, Hararis and folks. And so a lot goes into this. But at one level, you're 100% right, and there's some other levels to it, in my view. Klaus Schwab has said, we want an angrier world. So they want you to see dystopia and pain. It was declassified that since the 60s, the CIA wanted ugly art, ugly architecture, ugly culture, so that you would accept an uglier world and just get used to it and wouldn't demand beauty and wouldn't go along with people that wanted a better world because they were about to end the experiment of America with all its problems and all the issues. It was the wild, wild west. And people could come here. It was the best house in a bad neighborhood. And they could really aspire to be a maverick and to innovate. Every other place had shut down innovation because elites didn't want anything to challenge their monopoly of hegemonic control. That's why feudalism looks the same everywhere. You keep people on tiny pieces of land in every culture, in Japan, ancient Europe, you name it. The nobles were a foot or two higher than the serfs because they'd been kept at starvation levels for hundreds and hundreds of years. It's a management system to keep people dumb and poor, like the famous comedian George Carlin said, they want you dumb, they want you stupid, and just passive enough to do the work until you retire, and then they can steal your pension. And so now, with robots and all the rest of the stuff, they don't even need people. Life was always cheap. Now it's seen as we're eating up their resources. So they don't want the world to aspire to a 2-car garage and a vacation and healthcare and a small swimming pool in the backyard and access to medical care. With all this technology and all the science, we should be working. They have all the actuaries 2-3 days a week, living like kings. But instead, they set up legal systems and corporate systems and tax systems that tax the middle class and the poor, give people benefits only for the social controls that come out of it so they can manage us as serfs. But then it gets worse. If you talk to, when I covered Bilderberg myself more than 10 times, my crew many other times, we get into the hotel a few days before they close it. And I hand out a card and I say, when the Bilderberg group comes here to the waiters and to the staff and to the bartender, to the bellhop, when they come here and you see how rude and evil and mean they are, and you hear what they're saying, here's my phone number, call me and give me information. If you can get any papers or things they throw in the trash, give them to me. I learned that from Jim Tucker, an old reporter that had been covering him since the 70s. And he's dead now, but he was a really interesting, old-fashioned gumshoe. And so they would then be so rude and so mean and never give a 1-cent tip. None of them give tips. Hillary Clinton at a rrestaurant gives no tip. A lot of times skips out on it. And they're all like this. Gavin Newsom, I've told people that know him, they're all like this because they are such sociopaths / psychopathic. They're all on that scale that to them, they don't understand doing good to others comes back to you. They don't get that if they crap in the swimming pool, they've got to close the community pool because they're so rich and powerful, they're disconnected from ever being in a community pool. So they feel so insulated and so disdainful, but deep down, even though their consciousness is evil, their body, even their genetics still has the old human there. So they subconsciously hate themselves. So they then project onto the public their own self-loathing. And I've talked to top psychiatrists about psychopaths and serial killers. They only feel alive when they're doing something bad or being nasty. And if they do anything nice, they are so hyper competitive that they feel like they're being cheated. So they're doing all these destructive things. What are their trillions in stolen money going to do when there's a nuclear war? What's it going to do when there's no nice city to go spend the money in? So consciously they go, yeah, we'll dumb everybody down and make them stupid and poor to control them, but they're not even conscious enough to go, that'll blow back, because they have such little humanity, they can't even understand that basic thing. Yeah, be hard in business, be serious, don't let folks push you around, but also realize you've got to not just give a homeless person $10, you've got to create a culture in a society that has things to aspire to and honor and competition, to where people are brought up to believe in something. But if you believe in something good, you'll become a high-functioning, successful person in your hierarchy of needs. And the final hierarchy, after food and sustenance and medical and family, is helping others and being a pillar, because you are connected to everybody. I'm not a collectivist in government makes you collective and makes us collective. No, we are collectivist creatures. We're a hive creature, but through individual determination, making the best decisions and proving what works best, we then collectively opt into the best system and the best collective mode. We still own things, we still have privacy, but it's because we collectively agree on what's good. They want a system that's tyrannical and centralized out of pure avarice and selfishness and greed at a overdriving level. And so they are completely against the very civilization that has made them fabulously rich and powerful as parasites. If cancer had a consciousness, it would say, I better not kill the body. I better just stay this size because I'll die. But cancer doesn't have a consciousness. If it had a consciousness, it would be thinking, I'm all powerful. I can't be stopped. Look at me. I'm taking over the brain, the lungs, the bones, the blood. I'm taking over the skin. But the whole thing dies. So they're like a conscious cancer that doesn't care it's destroying the host. And so they don't have that connectiveness with us. And so that's why they are the plague. And that's why humanity goes through cycles. We all know that. We're in a major turning right now, the fourth turning. And the globalists know that, so they want complete control and power because they know their old system's about to die. They want to have the Great Reset that I cover in my book, The Great Awakening, that's already a bestseller, to have even greater tyranny out of the collapse of their old parasitic financial system. And so we're now at that point where they're trying to double down instead of in the cycle of hard times make strong men make good times make weak men make bad times, and then bad times make strong men. Obama and others call it the end of history. And they want such a scientific, factory-farmed, dumbed-down population that they even allow to be around. They want 500 million. That's official number. So they want to get rid of 7.5 billion people. And they want factory-farmed people that they mind control, they read the thoughts of, they control the thoughts of, and the dreams of, so they can play God. This is the dystopic, mad scientist hell they're building, and that's why they're at war against the natural order, because the natural order isn't conducive to the cancer taking over.
And so, how would you define who, when you say they? How do you define they? Who is the they?
There are sociopaths and psychopaths in the Chinese government and corporations. There are sociopaths and psychopaths in the German government. There are sociopaths and psychopaths in the U.S. government. There are sociopaths and psychopaths in the Israeli government. There are sociopaths and psychopaths in the Russian government. But they've already been through 80 plus years of this, so they're in many ways having a renaissance and trying to get away from it. Whereas we haven't fully gone to the bottom yet, so we're going deeper into it. But if you want to know who runs it, BlackRock is, you know this, you've covered it. BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard, all controlled by the same group of less than a dozen managers, control 88% of world assets and wealth. And they've said we'll use this to control people. They want to cut off our resources. They're saying, we can't take showers or wash our clothes. It's in Obama told Africans you can't have a car or air conditioning, but you can have jumbo jets and palatial things all over the place. And so it's a religion of do as I say, not as I do. I'm an anointed one. I'm a priest class. I rule over you. You're a serf. You have nothing. And we know who runs it. The handful of families and groups that control BlackRock, just like you mentioned, network, their revelation of the method, they're telling you right there. They have a plan for humanity. They want to just dumb us down and brush us aside. And then they control the defense contractors, big pharma. They bring up the politicians they control. They penetrate the cabinets, as Klaus Schwab said. The WEF's just their spokesperson group. It's their PR firm. And they have stolen the world's wealth, and they believe it's owned by them. And they believe, you go into your pantry to get some flour, and there's weevils in it. You kill the weevils. And then they see us as just, they say this. There's too many people. We got to get rid of them. We don't need all these humans anymore. Well, we don't need you, Klaus Schwab, or Yuval Noah Harari. And then some people say, well, is it this conspiracy or is it that group? Klaus Schwab's family were Nazis. Yuval Harari's weren't. Xi Jinping helped round up his own family in the Cultural Revolution and watches his father and family were attacked and his sister was tortured. He agreed with it. So he was rewarded by the parasitic system to be the leader of the country and a dictator to serve that ruling communist oligarchy because he literally stood by while his father was pilloried in the town square and while his sister was beaten to death. And so he's so committed to the party, he was rewarded in the top slot. And so he's just a manifestation. So if you look at the brain of a Henry Kissinger and the brain of a Zbigniew Brzezinski, one is Chinese, one is Jewish. Or the mind of Adolf Hitler. Hitler said everybody else is weak and dumb, survival of the fittest, social Darwinism. We're going to kill everybody that doesn't go along with us, and some will be left as slaves, but really we'll get rid of them later. And people say, well, why is Yuval Noah Harari saying we don't need humans, it's time to get rid of people, the future's not human? Hitler just said the future isn't anybody but an Aryan, which is bad enough. Yuval Noah Harari says the future ain't even human. That's a quote. He says humans are gone by 2047. And you can read NBC headlines, the same thing. A New York Times headlines, looking forward to the end of humanity. I'm in the grocery store checkout lane. Saw a similar headline last week. It's telling you, you're garbage, you're filth, you kill the earth, don't have a life force, don't have a survival instinct, you're killing everything. Look at the garbage, look at the homeless, look at the everything. Die, roll over, don't live, don't thrive, don't contend for the future, don't affect the future, because we have the Renaissance system of believing in humans and egalitarianism and classical liberalism and really empowering people, but doing it through the classical human system. That's the great awakening that we're in, that's countering the Great Reset, the war against the globalists, defeating the globalists and launching the next great Renaissance. And they can't compete with that. They are a evil, stinking witch that's literally trying to hand out poison apples versus Marilyn Monroe in their prime. Freedom in the Renaissance and liberalism, real liberalism, is Marilyn Monroe in her prime. And the New World Order is like a Skeksis from the Dark Crystal. They have to make everything ugly because they're ugly spiritually, culturally, metaphysically, and they need everything ugly to camouflage themselves because they're so fallen.
Add sparkle to any design with glitter stickers by Sticker Mule. Glitter stickers are a fun way to showcase your artwork, promote, or be.
So I just learned recently that the AP, the news service, the AP, the owners of the AP, is it the Rothschilds?
They own a lot of stuff through BlackRock. They also own The Economist magazine. And yeah, the Rothschilds, that's a whole other story. I'm sure you know it. But the British Empire was dominant until 1815. But it was in complete control for 100 years after that, because the Battle of Waterloo was so decisive, defeating the continental forces of Napoleon Bonaparte for the second time with the Prussian-British pincer attack, that the Rothschilds, this is on record, sent a carrier pigeon to a fast Corvette ship to race across and to tell everyone when the stock market opened that morning that Napoleon had won and that Lord Wellington had been smashed. And the stock market went down 99%. The Rothschilds then bought up 99%, this is on record, 99% of the stock market. So they weren't just the richest family in the world up until that point. They were the richest family in the world up until that point on record. Okay? Married into the British royalty, everything. Then after 1815, the Battle of Waterloo, they owned the British Empire. All the major stocks, they got it. Of course, Napoleon really lost. And they only had 6 hours. 6 hours before they came in and said, no, Wellington has won. Wellington has won. And then it all shot back up above where it even was. So look for them to do this again with a cyber attack. They're saying Trump supporters with no evidence, working with Putin, are going to cyber attack to cancel the election. The election, he's 10 points ahead and or more. So yeah, they'll use major crises and calamities to consolidate power. And the Anglo-American establishment, there's a tripolar world. There's the Russians, who are the junior. There are the Chinese, that are the middle group. The Anglo-American British Empire, that Carol Quigley, Bill Clinton's mentor, wrote a 1,100-page book bragging about, from their perspective, their right to rule, how they were going to take over the world. In 1967, he wrote it. And so it's a big Brzezinski wrote books admitting this. They all admit this at the academic level like we're dumb animals. I'm just reading what they're actually saying. And they, in mainline PhD history books, they admit all this about the Rothschilds. Now, I go on there and say it. They go, oh, anti-Semitic. It has nothing to do with Jews to say that the Rothschilds did this and are super powerful, or the Chinese, because Xi Jinping is bad. Am I saying Chinese are bad? No, I'm not. But it really is true that that's how a German Jewish banking family who ran pawn shops, basically, in Germany and loaned money to people, that's how they parlayed their wealth from 500 years ago by 1815 to rule most of the earth. The sun never set on the British Empire. Then World War I, the Austro-Hungarian Empire got so dominant. I'm going to give a history lesson. It's important to know that the British intelligence of the Black Hand assassinate Franz Ferdinand, the Archduke. The Germans all go crazy because they were winning with all the new patents, all the new science. The British newspapers were talking about the German problem, and they're going to. So the British Empire was corrupt, overextended and so World War I was started by them. World War II was Hitler. He was bad, but the Versailles Treaty and all that led to Hitler coming to power. There's a lot of evidence British intelligence didn't control Hitler, but nudged him and funded him early on to have a new enemy. And so that's really how this world has been operating. It's how it's been done. And so after World War I, the British Empire made a deal, and even Teddy Roosevelt wrote about this. It was Winston Churchill wrote the 3-volume set, The Histories of the British-Speaking Peoples. Yeah. He was half American. He says in there, we came over after World War I, we set up the CFR, we merged British intelligence with U.S. intelligence, right? And then that is the Anglo-American Empire. They call it themselves, and Putin says, I'm fighting the Anglo-American elite. Yep. I have no problems with the Americans. He said, I have a problem with your Anglo-American oligarchs. He calls us the Anglo-Americans. And who are they? The Anglo-Americans come from a Norse tribe that later became William the Conqueror and took over France. And they came and took over England. So if you go back to all of this, they take the name of William the Conqueror's group from 1,000 years ago.
Alex, have you seen it is unbelievable if you ever see it. There's a movie about the Rothschilds, that's black and white, that's made by them to promote them, and it looks like something Hitler made to smear them. And it's their thing bragging about their family history. It's unbelievable.
No, I haven't seen that.
Yeah, keep in mind, they made it themselves. Isn't this great? And you're like, it's crazy if you find it.
Come see us do a live stand-up show. We'll be in Venice, California, Palmdale, California, Omaha, Des Moines, Milwaukee, Lansing, Bend, Oregon, Portland, Oregon, Seattle, Washington, Boston, Massachusetts, and we're going to Europe. Do you live in Europe? We're